Today's daf is daf Pei Vav, and we'll begin on the bottom of Pei Hey Amid Beis, 2 lines up before the end of the Amid. Krivase de Rav Nachman. So we're talking about a woman who's related to Rav Nachman and Zabinta l'Ksubasa. She sold her ksuba to a lokeach b'tovas hana. Tovas hana means like for a fraction of the price. And Igarshu shkiva, she was divorced, and then she died. And now her daughter comes to collect the ksuba of her late deceased mother from her father. But she had already sold the ksuba, so asu katavi le'lebrata. And the lokeach now comes and he demands the collection of the ksuba from the karka because he had purchased the ksuba. Rav Nachman made a declaration, Lekker the Lispa Allah Eitzes, is there no one here who's willing to give an Eitzah to this daughter, to this bas, such that the Lekuchos will not be able to confiscate her karka. Now we start the daf for today. And now Rav Nachman himself offers an Eitzah. He gives her a suggestion, which that's questionable, and he himself is he's going to regret the fact that he gave her this eitzah. And he says to her, Tezel v'techale. Now, in order to understand these two words, Tezel v'techale, we have to go back a little bit on Daf Pei Hey Amid Beis a little bit earlier. And that's the statement of Shmuel. Just a second, let me just read it inside. To the effect that here it is. Amar Shmuel, Pei Hey Amid Beis, Hamocher shtarcho l'chavero v'chazar v'chalo mochu v'afilu yoresh mocher. So after the malva sells the shtarchov to a lokeach, the malva can turn around and be mochel l'chov, and the lokeach will not be able to collect that chov. So tezel v'techala, let her go, this bas, and be mochel l'ksubasa de'imo l'gabi avua. Her father owes the ksuba to her mother, and now she inherits her mother. Even a yoresh who inherits a chov, meaning she inherited the chov that her father is indebted to pay to her mother, can go ahead and be mocheles. After she's mocheles, lokeach no longer has bailus over the chov. He cannot collect the chov. Terasa mineh. And now what's going to happen is later on when her father dies, she'll inherit her father, and all his possessions will now be hers. Shama, the bas, understood the words of Rav Nachman, Azla v'yachilta, and she went ahead per his counsel, and she was mocheles l'ksuba in such a way, based on the principle of Shmuel, the lokeach now is holding on to a shtar ksuba, but he can't collect the shtar because the chov was already waived. It was already nimcha. But Rav Nachman had a little bit of a regret, a second thought, because asinu atzmeni ka'orchei dayanim, right? You pay a good lawyer to come up with a legal loophole to avoid payment, but a dayan is not supposed to be an orach din. He's supposed to be fair to all parties. And here he had favoritism towards his own relative in order to protect her from the lokeach. But as it turns out, he's being mafsid the other baldin, which is lokeach. So when I asked him to make Karamaika Silver, didn't Rav Nachman realize that in doing so he was overstepping his bounds? What was he thinking? And the Gemara says that he would apply the pasuk in Mishlei. I'm sorry, it's a pasuk in Yeshayahu Navi, that a person should be very careful about helping out his blood relatives. That in light of the fact that he's tipping the scale in favor of his favorite, in this case, favoritism towards his relative, and he's an Adam Choshev, people look up to him, and he is a paradigm. So that's not a good thing to do. So that even though he should have his krovim and their best interest in mind, but not in the position as an Adam Choshev, as a dayan. Gufa, Amar Shmuel, Mochesh Tarchov L'Chaver V'Chazim L'Chol Mochel Afilu Yorish Mochel Amar Avuna B'Reid Rav Yeshua Ve'i Pikeachu Mekarkesh LeZuze V'Kosav LeShtar B'Shmei. Okay, I was very challenged last night, close to midnight, when I tried to figure out what this Shtar B'Shmei means. But here's what I came up with, and if you can improve on it, I'd be very happy. When a person buys a shtar chov from the malveh, he is in a very precarious situation because the money that he paid might end up being worthless for him because the malveh could go ahead and be mochel the chov. So is there any way that the buyer who purchased this shtar chov from the malveh could guarantee payment of the chov? And the answer is he can create a shtara b'shmei. And what does that mean? He's going to pay off the loveh to set up an independent shtar between the loveh and him. Him meaning the lokeach. And that shtar is going to testify to the effect that the loveh will pay the lokeach. Forget it, we're basically cutting out the malveh here. We're circumventing the malveh, and there'll be a direct chov owed by the loveh to the lokeach. And therefore, even if the malveh goes ahead and he's mochel chov, lokeach will not lose his money because he'll be collecting that chov from the loveh. Now, obviously, the question is, why would the loveh agree to such an arrangement? I mean, we're worried about the fact that the malveh will be mochel chov. From the loveh's perspective, that would be the greatest news you could give him, that the malveh was mochel chov. Why is he going to generate his own ischayvus vis-a-vis the lokeach? Like, what does he owe the lokeach? He owes him nothing. But the answer is mekarkeish lezuze. The lokeach is going to pay him off. So again, it's very complicated here because I'm wondering how much is he going to pay the loveh? Obviously, he's not going to pay the loveh the equivalent amount of the halvah. Let's say the halvah is worth 1,000, so he's going to pay the loveh 1,000. He didn't gain anything. So we're trying to figure out here, and that's what I was racking my brains. What would be an arrangement that would be beneficial to both the lokeach and the loveh? And I think it comes down to dollars and cents. The lokeach will have to offer a very attractive offer to the loveh. The loveh is willing to accept that, even though it might be considerably less than the halvah itself. Again, what is the loveh gain here? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Let's be monofshach. Either the loveh has to pay up the malveh the full 1,000, or he'll pay up the lokeach. I'm simply missing one piece of the puzzle. I don't understand what the Lova gains by agreeing to do this thing, to create this new shtar. I don't know if you have any notes here. The only thing that crosses my mind, but I don't know if this is worth anything, is that the new shtar has a later date than the original shtar. And that's beneficial for the Lova because the shibud will only be chal at the later date. So, for example, if the Lova wants to sell his karkos to buyers who don't want to buy leaned real estate, then he can do so because the new date on the shtar is much later than the original date on the shtar. So the Lova gains two things. First of all, he's got money in his pocket because the Lokech is paying him right now what we call in probably Arabic bakshish. So the Lova already pockets that money. And maybe the date of payment is much later on. So in the meantime, he gets interest on his money or whatever, he invests it. And he gains something else that the date of the shtar is later. And therefore, there's no shibud chal on his nechasim until that later date. Again, all this is an event that the malva will be mochel l'shtar. The chov. If the malva is not mochel l'chov, then we go back to square one, and the original shtar is still valid. So again, that sort of slugs up my thesis because then, why would a buyer buy karka from the Lova? The buyer is not a navi. He doesn't know that for sure, the malva is going to be mochel l'chov. And therefore the date of the lien is much later on based on the second shtar. He has no way of knowing that. It could be the malva will not be mochel l'chov. And then we go back to the earlier date on the original shtar. And the lekuchas are buying now karka that has a lien on it. I don't know. Again, ad kan. Okay. Now we move on to the sugya called garmi. There's something called grama and there's something called garmi. The principle with regard to grama is that grama b'nezikin is potter. You cannot force a person in a bezdin to pay up compensation for grama, for an indirect damage. But with regard to garmi, which is almost direct damage, that's already a machlokes between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. Rabbi Meir holds that garmi is chayav, and Chacham say you're potter. We paskin halacha like Rabbi Meir in this case, that garmi is chayav. So, for example, if you burn someone's shtar milva, the malva has a shtar. Once his shtar goes up in smoke, he has no recourse to collect his chov. That's called garmi. It's not a direct damage because he didn't take money out of the pocket of the malva, but he took his shtar. Now, the shtar on the market is worth the cloth that it's written on. It's worth 5 shekel. But to the malva, it's worth 1,000. We have another case called Mechitza Sakeren Shenifritza, where somebody, destroys the fence around the field of someone else. Okay, so there are various cases of garmi. Omar Meimer, man v'don dina de garmi, madbi le dmei shtar ma'ali. Now there are two chidushim here in Amema. Chidush number one is that having established in the name of Shmuel that the malva could be mochel l'chov after he sold it, and now the lokach's money is worthless. He, the malva, through his mechila, is causing a hefsed to the lokach. Does lokach have a right to turn the tables on the malva and sue him for damages as a mazik? So the first chiddush of Abemar is that this is classified as garmi. And therefore, since we pass like with Meir, the malva after his mechila is liable to reimburse the lokach. The trouble with this sugya is that I don't know how it jives with the previous sugya of Rav Huna, where Rav Huna tells the lokach how to somehow circumvent this situation in which the malva will be mochel l'chol. Why is the lokach nervous about that if he has recourse to sue the malva for damages as a garmi, as a mazik, if he's mochel l'chol? Okay, maybe the Gemara is not going according to the Madi Omer Doan Din the garmi. Maybe the lokach doesn't want to have to go through the whole hassle of suing the malva and so forth and so on. Now there's a second chiddush in Amema. How much of a loss did the malva cause the lokach? Meaning, when you evaluate a compensation package for a mazik, in this particular set of circumstances, there are two possibilities. You can evaluate the loss of the lokach that was incurred as a result of the malva's mechila in terms of the money that the lokach put down on the table to buy the shtar, which is considerably less than the halva itself. On the other hand, I can look at the shtar and I can say the shtar is worth that much more. So lokach paid 75, the shtar is 100. How do we evaluate the chiyuv of the mazik, meaning the malva? What should he be paying to the lokach? Should he be paying 75 because that's what lokach put down on the table? That's what he was mafsid. Or should he be paying the full 100 because had it not been that the malva was mochel l'chov, the lokach would have collected a full 100. So that's the amount that he was. And Amema's chiddush is magdi beid dmei shtar ma'aliyah, that the lokach will be able to sue the malva for full price of the shtar, the 100 rather than the 75. And that means, again, this is a long discussion, that garmi sets up the shtar as if the shtar itself is a hefza shel mamon, and the mechila of the malva is tantamount to burning up the shtar, because after the mechila, it's nimchal shibudo, the shtar is worthless. So the hezek to the lokach is on the gufa shel shtar, and the shtar is considered mamon equal to the value of the shtar, meaning of the chol. But if, on the other hand, garmi is not chayav, because at the end of the day it's an indirect mazik, and we don't view the shtar as gufa mamon, then all the lokach has recourse to sue the malva is for the gufa shel mamon, and the gufa shel mamon is the 5 shekel that this shtar is worth on the market as a piece of parchment, as a vellum. Havi Uvda, there was a case in which, after the sale of the shtar chov by the malva to the lokach, the malva went ahead and he was mochel l'chol. The kafye rafram l'Rav Ashi the agdibe. Now the word kafye, which literally means he forced him, he compelled him, means in this context that he brought proofs to Rav Ashi, to the legal principle that the malva has to pay off. We did it to garmi, meaning that we pass him like Rabbi Meir, and this is a case of garmi. How much money did he pay him? Did he force him to pay the malva to pay the lokach? Like a person who buys beams of wood, and he's very meticulous to make sure that the beams are perfectly smoothed out and cut properly. So too, Rav Ashi would have to be very medadek with the malva after Rafram proved this point, to make sure that the lokach will collect the entire hefsed from the garmi of the malva, which means the entire value of the shtar. Now, by way of introduction to this sugya, what we need to know is that there are three different laws of collection. The first law is that of a malva and a lova. The malva received most from the lova, and therefore, the lova received most from the malva, and therefore the malva wants to collect most. So in event that the lova defaults on the loan and he has no cash, he has no liquid assets, then he'll pay metalto, which is called sugman. Then we have a mazik. In the case of a mazik, he collects, in other words, the nizak collects from the mazik karka idis or metaltalin, and then we have the isha collecting a ksuba, and here we have a difference between the ikar adin, in which she collects karka, and metaltalin mishtabi l'ksuba, but there was a takana later on that she could collect even metaltalin. Then we have a case of a poel, and a poel has a right to demand mos. He doesn't want to get karka. He doesn't have the headache of selling something on the market. And in the event that the balabais doesn't have any liquid assets, he would have to sell his karka in order to bring domim to the poel. Omar Amen Rishmei Rav Chama, Haiman deika lake subas ishu balchov. There are two people who are coming to claim money from the same person. That person is both a lover and he's a baal who has to pay the ksuba. The isla ara, the isli zuze. So now we have a very simple case. It gets more complicated as we go along. And this person who owes money to two people, to the balchov, to his malva, and to the isha for the ksuba, he has both karka and mos. So he'll pay the mos to the balchov. And that's called in the Gemara's language, balchov b'salkina le'bezuze. And as far as the isha and aksuba is concerned, misalkin le'bi'ara, he will give the karka to pay the ksuba. Now, there's a long discussion here about Rashi. Rashi seems to indicate that it's irrelevant in this case. What is the zman of the ksuba? Was it earlier than halva or later than the halva? It's irrelevant because the balchov, the one who's obligated to pay, has both karka and zuz. Haiki dine v'haiki dine. The malva gave mos, he has the right to collect mos. And the isha never paid a penny for her ksuba. She doesn't deserve to get 200 zuz as payment in liquid cash, and therefore she only relies on what's called the shibud karka. When a man marries a woman, there's a shibud karka in lieu of the payment of the ksuba, and therefore she'll receive the karka. Now here there's a long discussion about nedunya. When when a woman gets married, she brings in kesef nedunya. So therefore, you would think that with the divorce, she has rights to collect kesef, at least as far as the nedunya, if not as far as the ksuba is concerned. But Rashi learns that even as far as nedunya is concerned, she only collects from shibud karka because she has smichus das on the shibud karka. So this is a concept of Soloveitchik always used to call it betichus. Betichus means that when a person has money coming to him, he has to rely on some security. And that's called shibud karka. Now we get to the more complicated case. The ilo ika elachadara. Let's say, for example, there's only one piece of karka below chazia, and its value is only equal to one of the various tashlumim. So who gets the first dibs? Is it the balchov or is it the isha v'aksuva? And here Rashi adds that both were given on the same day. And Ein Kosvin shows, that's a sugya in Bava Basra, and therefore they both, the balchov and the isha, have equal rights to collect that one single piece of karka. The more establishes the Malchov Yavinah. For some unknown reason, I'm just dramatizing it, the Gemara is going to give the reason. The Malchov has the upper hand. He has the first shot at the karka, and he'll collect the karka. The Isha is left with no payment of haksuba for the time being. My timer, while the Isha lo yavinah, Yosef imasha Isha rotza lisa, Isha rotza linose, Isha rotza linose. She's very eager to get married, and she will not be stirred, I don't know how you say that in English, by the fact that she won't be able to collect her ksub in an event that her husband leaves her nothing to collect from, because she's very eager to get married, and even in such a scenario, she'll get married. But as far as the Baal is concerned, he's not going to extend a loan, knowing full well that the lova has X amount of value in real estate and owes money to the ksuba. And this is called a famous principle that appears over and over again in the Zikir, Shalotino Delis Bifnei Lov. We want to guarantee that a person who's in need of a loan, he will find a man of means who's willing to extend the loan to him. But again, that man of means will only extend the loan if he has a certain security in the shibud. And if this shibud is now split between him and the Isha, and the Isha has rights to that shibud to collect a ksuba, and he's left the proverbial holding the bag, he's not going to be so eager to extend the loan. Amalei Rav Papa Rav Chom. Vadai diamrisu mishmei de Rava. Is it really true what they say in the name of Rav? There was like a shmua. There was a rumor going around in the Bati Midrashos that you, Rav Chama, said the following in the name of Rava. We're going to see that this halach that's being attributed to Rava is not correct. What was attributed to Rava? Hi, Mandamaski Beizuzi V'Yislei Ara V'Yasa Malcho V'Katavimine V'Omar Le Zil Shkol Ara Amrina Le Zil Zabin At V'Isi Hav Le. That in event that the lover who owes money to the Malva has karka, he has no liquid assets. The Malchov comes and he says, look, I gave you liquid assets, I gave you cash, I want cash in return. The lover says to him, take karka in lieu of the chov. No, we tell the lover, you go out and sell your karka, convert it into liquid cash, and then you'll pay the Malva. And the Gemara rejects this. It couldn't be that Rava would make such a statement. Because the Malva relies, again, we come back to that concept called betichus, on the collection of his chov, primarily from karka. He doesn't know whether the lova is going to have liquid cash to pay him back. So when he enters into this contractual halva agreement, he has in mind to collect his chov from karka. So we're not going to force the lover to sell his karka in order to liquidate it and pay cash to the malva. Amalei, Rav Chama says, lo, I never said such a thing. So Rav Papa now wants to investigate Rav Chama. How did this rumor circulate that you, Rav Chama, was saying in the name of Rava something that's not correct and not accurate at all? What was the case? And now we'll begin to understand from the case how this misunderstanding evolved. Rav Chama answered, it was a different case entirely. The lover, at the time of payment, when the malva comes to collect his chov, he comes up with a story, a malarkey. He makes up a lot of hogwash, and he says, I don't have any mows. Right? You see that I have mows. Those mows don't belong to me. They belong to a guy. We find out that he's lying through his teeth. This is a very unique case, says Rabbi Chama. The reason we're going to force him to sell his karka is because he really had mows. And he lied And he told us a malarkey story, a made-up story, that he has no malls. It belongs to John Paul Jones. And we know that's not true. Let him go ahead and sell his karka and convert it into malls. But a general lover who, honest to goodness, has no malls, we're not going to force him to sell his karka because the ikar b'tifus of the malv is on the karka. And now we start a new sugya. There's a machlokes between Rav Huna and Rav Papa in the Masechet Erchin Daf Chaf Beis as to why a malva has no recourse to collect his chov after the death of the lova from what's called yisomim ktanim. According to Rav Huna, the reason for this is we always fear that maybe the father, before his death, paid up the chov. And the Yisomim Ketanim have no way of knowing this. They can't put forth a claim because what do they know? They're Ketanim. Rav Papa, on the other hand, says that Priyas Bal Chov mitzvah and Yisomim Lav B'nei mitzvah ninu, these are Ketanim, they're not chayiv in the mitzvah. Now here we have a very important note as to whether Rav Papa holds Shibud Doraisa or Lav Doraisa. So we're going to skip this entire sugya. We're going to go back to the Ramban. And the Ramban says that according to Rav Papa, it seems from our sugya that Priyas Bal Chov mitzvah, that Shibud Lav Doraisa. So on a Doraisa level, there's no Shibud that would force the payment of this Chov. The Rabbanan made a takana of Shibud Nechasim in order to facilitate the mitzvah of Priyas Bal Chov. Amalei Rav Kahana Rav Papa, l'didach the Amr Priyas Bal Chov mitzvah, according to your shita, that the reason why a lova has to, it's very bizarre, by the way, that a reason why a lova halachically has to pay up the loan is only because of a mitzvah. The Torah commands him in a mitzvah. As the Torah says in Parshas Kedoshim, it says, Vehin tzedek yilachem, and Chazal Darshan in Bometziyah Memtes, Lo Melchosh Yehei Hein Shelcha Tzedek, the Lav Shelcha Tzedek. So as you promise to pay back this chov, you have to be Mekayim your promise. Is now what happens if the Lova Omar, he claims, Lo Nichali Diliyevid Mitzvah. I'm not in the mood to pay back the chov. It's a mitzvah, okay. You know, I went to Slichas this morning, and I said Avinu Malkeinu, and I wore tefillin, talis and tefillin. I'm a good Jew, but this mitzvah is not for me. You know, I like the mitzvahs, but this one, I'd rather forfeit this mitzvah. Can we force him to pay up based on a mitzvah? Now we have a general principle called kofin ala mitzvahs. Amalei, so Papa said, Tanina, we learned in a brisa that now the punchline is brisa is on Peivavam Beis, which is called Makin Osad Sheteitzi Nafsho. But man, when do we give Malchus Harboy? That's how mitzvahs losas. If a person violates a law, he gets Malchus Harboy. Our mitzvahs say a person is unwilling to build a sukkah or to take a lulav. Go Omer say sukkah v'ena oseh, lulav v'ena oseh. And then what do? We don't give him Malchus Harboyim